As the reality of the ultimate sacrifice hits so close to home.
At our house, he is the villain.
Sometimes you just gotta use the right thing.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to That Voiceover Podcast, the show for and about the voiceover profession. I'm Stephen Cox. Now, virtually any time in film or TV that you hear dialogue spoken that you can't see, that dialogue was performed in post-production by voiceover actors in a process called looping. My guest, Teri Douglas, is one of the foremost experts working in looping today, and her Burbank facility, Loop Troupe, has looped scores of films, TV shows, and video games, and she's been kind enough to come on the podcast to talk about it. Teri Douglas, welcome.
Well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, whether it's for TV, video games, or film, I know a lot goes into a looping session. A lot happens behind the scenes, and that goes even beyond just the casting part of it. I know you do a ton of preparation, including a lot of research. Give us an idea of what goes into a session.
Well, when I get called by a studio to put together a film, I'll spot a film, see what it's needed for voice-wise and what the director's asking for and the editors and what's needed. And I spot the background of the film to find out what's missing as well and make suggestions. And then I put together my list of talent, which can handle these activities in a small amount of people. They can do a lot. And we'll go to the stage and record it.
So you work with a very select group of people, and I think you select them partially because they're pretty versatile as actors, right?
Yes, loopers are actors, and they're excellent at improv because everything we do on the stage is primarily improv unless we have scripted dialogue as if we were doing airline PAs or newscasters with TVs going on in the background and such. So we definitely, we do our research at home where if we're doing a film that had to do with economics or medical, that I would tell the talent what's going to be in the film, and they have to research those areas so they can speak like those people in the background of the film.
Since most of what gets said in the background is unintelligible, why can't it be gibberish? Why does it have to be absolutely accurate?
Well, it's not unintelligible. Sometimes we do that, but for the most part, we do record at full volume and they play it down in the background. So when you hear a restaurant scene, when they film a scene, let's say with a restaurant with two principals sitting at a table eating, we can't mic the entire restaurant of extras because that will tie the dialogue to the principals. So we have, a group of loopers come in to do the background, but they are speaking real words because you can slightly hear words here and there pop in and out. So it just adds to the realism of the scene.
Now, I know you do looping as well. You are listed on IMDb as credited with a ton of projects as casting director, but I know that you've looped as well. How did you get started? Did you get started as a casting director or as a looper first?
Well, I've been an actor since I was a kid, and then I got into casting with on-camera commercials and different things like that. And then all of a sudden I found out what looping was all about 15 years ago and fell in love with it and started working with a group and doing many projects. And then I branched out and started my own group and have just taken off from there, basically.
You always work directly with the creative people behind a project, correct? So if say Steven Spielberg is doing a project and he needs looping, you and he will work together on exactly what it is that he wants, correct?
Well, yes, I haven't worked with Steven Spielberg yet. I did a video game for him, but yes, basically what happens is I'll sit down in a screening with editors or by myself and take a look at the film, and then the director will give me notes. They either call me or I'll sit down with them, and they'll tell me what their wish list is and what's missing in the film that they didn't record or they need to replace. There could be an airplane flying by, which made the background production sound bad. So we definitely sit down hand in hand with the directors and the editors.
And so once you guys have kind of, hammered out what it is that is needed in these particular scenes to sort of flesh things out, then you go through, you bring in the particular people who can do it, and you make them do the research, and then you hit the studio. And then what happens at that point? You just go through and you record it to screen? Do you record it real time?
Yes, we record to picture. We lock sound and picture. So we are playing the film footage for each scene that we need to replace. And we have a microphone in the center of a big sound stage with a great big movie screen in front of us. And there's an editor in the booth behind us. And so the group usually stands in front of the microphone in the middle of the stage. So if we are doing a restaurant scene or an airport scene, we walk by the mic and talk, or we stand there and we move around in different areas so that it recreates the sound of what we're looking at on the screen. So that's our job, is to bring alive what's already up there and to add to it. Sometimes scenes are filmed and the emotion of it's a little low and they want it to seem happier. So then we will be happier and when we chat with each other on the stage and more lively, and it brings the scene up a bit. And they'll record that and they play that in the background of the production.
Now, I'm curious to know how many people work at once. I suppose it varies per project, but I'm guessing that there are certain instances where you have enormous crowds that you have to duplicate, and so you'll have to do a number of tracks layered on. Is that right?
Yes, TV shows generally hire anywhere from 3 to 6 people to work on their shows during the day. Usually it's about 4. A feature film is a lot different. It depends on the size of the background and what you're looking at. I normally bring in groups at least of 12 people to work on a feature per day. For my larger films that have huge backgrounds and lots of people walking around in the background, I'll bring up to about 22, 24 sometimes. They can be very large groups, but that's not normal. It's usually more of a size of about 12 to 14 people for a feature, because there's so much work that needs to be done, and you need a large variety of people that can cover it.
Now, you've done work in a lot of varied types of projects, like I said, from TV projects to video games to films. I want to ask you about some specific projects to know what kind of went into them and what you and Loop Troop did. Let's talk about Wedding Crashers. Now, you talk about elevating a mood. I suppose there was a lot of that. Talk about the experience of doing looping for Wedding Crashers.
Wedding Crashers was a lot of fun to work on. We have a lot of background scenes in that movie that, with the various weddings and receptions and parties that went on. And they needed the crowds to be larger from what they recorded in production. So my group, I think there was about 14 in that group. It was a big group. And we actually helped sing some of the fun songs with the crowds to make them rowdier and did the backgrounds. We also do voice replacements if a celebrity isn't available and we need a line here or there. We have people that can voice match people as well. But Wedding Crashers was primarily the large scenes that you see in the background with all the people to boost it up and make it sound like it was large people.
Tell me about Elf. Did you have to cast a lot of character voices for that? Was there a lot of Elf Walla that you had to deal with in that movie?
Well, Elf was a particular movie where we didn't have affected voices. We just sounded like adults. But I did hire people who sounded slightly younger, more in their 20s sounding, than older. And that was a particular film where it took place in New York. So I had people that were from New York working with us as well, loopers and actors, so that their accent was correct. Mm-hmm. And we did the people out on the street, people walking around. We had special people doing more elves that, when they're in the North Pole and all the activities that they go through. So we covered a great deal of work in that.
I also want to ask about one of my favorite movies, Rushmore. Tell us what it was like to work with Wes Anderson on that project.
Boy, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. I think that movie came out in like the mid-90s, didn't it? Or late 90s?
A long time ago. That movie, we had to fix a lot of the production because it was shot in Canada, from what I remember. And so we had a lot of accents poking out. And so we revoiced a lot of the, some primary of the characters were revoiced, but we also did the loop groups, the large sessions of loop groups, so they sounded like the kids there that were in the schools, but so they didn't sound Canadian.
Yeah, well, that would be a particular challenge, and I know that it's not so much the case anymore, but about over the last 10 years, a lot of people have been filming up in Canada, so I suppose that is a particular challenge that you face.
Yes, a lot of times we'll get things with a lot of Canadian accents on things, and we have to fix that so that it really fits where the film is supposed to be taking place, where they intended it. So we will, as a group, redo the backgrounds a lot.
Now, the last film that I want to ask about is Snakes on a Plane. I assume there was an awful lot of screaming going on with that.
Yes, one thing as a looper, we do a lot of screaming and yelling, and Snakes on a Plane was a lot of fun. It was with one of my very fun editors who's always lively and fun to work with. And basically I hired loopers who I knew had younger sounds who could scream and not lose their voice all day. And that is a very good talent to have, by the way. So when we started the movie on the set that day, I decided not to pre-show them the scene of what they were going to do. So I got up the right amount of loopers that I needed, and I said, all right, react. And they started seeing all the snakes crawling out and going all over, and they had these natural, funny, really screams and reactions, and it makes it really realistic when the loopers are very into it and have natural responses. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, Teri, you should have called me for that project, because I'll tell you would have gotten some really natural responses from this snake-phobic voice actor. Now, you do looping in a number of different languages on the Loop Troop website. I think you offer looping in, gosh, it looked like about 16 different languages. How do you direct a session when you don't speak the language?
Well, that's a good question. On a film called What Dreams May Come, I brought in about 14, 15 different foreign languages because it required that in all the different scenes in hell. And in many movies, we have lots of people speaking different languages. I bring in people who are native to those languages and know the language, as well as primarily the loop group speaks it, so we know for sure they're speaking it right. Do you know what I'm saying? We have ways of doing that.
So let's say somebody wants to get involved in looping. Now, I know you offer seminars at Loop Troop. What are some of the other things that an actor could do to prepare for a career in looping?
Looping is something I just spoke about in a class recently. These people that loop and loop regular, they're not just voiceover actors or actors. They can primarily do everything. They are really good actors. They're strong in their improv classes, and I really think scene study is very important because that's what we do to bring it alive on the stage. It's our job to stand there and bring that picture back, the background, alive again to where it was when they filmed it. So those take skills. They're not written out. People don't show up with scripts and start reading. It's all improv. So I think improv is really, really a must. And scene study is really important. Also, a lot of the times we do voiceover. So it's very important to take voiceover classes and learn how to read copy. So if you're asked to be the newscaster or do airline PAs, that you know how to speak at the mic and read. So we have a lot of tasks to do. So I think the most important thing about a real successful looper is that they're very well-rounded in everything. And they also, we're kind of like college students. Every time we get a new project, we run and research it. So we learn a lot every time about different subjects and things that you may not know about. And so we start notebooks, and we have tons and tons and piles of research so that we can primarily handle any subject, no matter what it is, or if it's a new thing we haven't tackled before, we will go and do the research on it. So I think it's really important for people to be really savvy with the computer as well as take all their classes.
Well, looping sounds very educational, and I think we've learned something here on the podcast today. Teri Douglas, thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
That Voiceover podcast is a co-production of Half Full and Get Creative Inc. Thanks for listening. I'm Stephen Cox.